Hey, Prairie Lakes Church, welcome once again. Here we are in August, and not just beginning. We're approaching the midpoint of August, so you're probably, in the throes of switching rhythms from summer to fall, and school coming up here pretty soon, and we're starting to tick up in the busyness department, probably. But first things first, thanks for being here. Attending regularly is a huge part of a healthy rhythm with God and His church, and in fact, that's a pretty good segue to where we're going to go this weekend. Last week we kicked off a brand new series that we're calling Rhythms of Rest, and the series really through the month of August is all about this gift that God's given us called the Sabbath. And so we started that last week, and if you missed it, you can catch back up off of our website. But this weekend, we're going to jump kind of into like the meat of Sabbath, what it is, and not only that, but really how do we start doing it? And actually, as a part of our time together this weekend, we're going to learn from a guy who has written about this, and he's actually coached not only all of our staff at Prairie Lakes on it, he's coached staff on hundreds and even thousands of churches across the country on how to do this thing. So I'll tell you how we're going to listen to him here in a minute. But before we get into that, let's do this first. Let's grab our Bibles. Let's open them up to Mark 2, 23 through 28 is where we're going to be this weekend. Mark 2, 23 through 28. And again, we really, if you've got Bibles with you, we really encourage that and for you to be in them with us and follow along with us, wherever you're at. We also will have the verses on the screen so we can all follow along together. But let's just start kind of reading this together. Here's Mark 2, and it's an encounter that Jesus has about the Sabbath. Here's where it starts. One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and as his disciples walked along, they began to pick some heads of grain. Okay? Walking through grain fields, picking off the heads of grain. The Pharisees said to him, "Look, why are they doing what's unlawful on the Sabbath?" Okay? So, just in case you need a little bit of a refresh or a quick reset, the Sabbath is one of the 10 commandments. So like, do not steal, do not murder, don't lie. I mean, like, the Sabbath is in there. Remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. And then the Pharisees, who were kind of the pastors, teachers, religious leaders of Jesus' day, they took the Sabbath pretty seriously. You can kind of understand why. I mean, especially if it's part of the 10 commandments. Okay, so their seriousness wasn't really the problem here. Sabbath is right up there with don't murder. When God told Moses about these 10 important things, he said, remember the Sabbath by setting it apart as a day where you stop doing all of the very productive things you do in the previous 6 days of your week, okay? So that should actually give us a clue not only at how serious the Pharisees were about it, but how serious God is about this whole thing. But the Pharisees took it to like a completely different level. They made up a bunch of extra rules that you wouldn't find anywhere else in the Bible, but were written down in some of their own documentation in places, and they all taught how you really should remember the Sabbath day, what you could and couldn't do. And suffice it to say, picking heads of grain violated one of those Sabbath rules that the Pharisees had set up. So let's keep reading 25 and 26. Jesus answered, "Okay, well, have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry and in need? In the days of Abiathar, the high priest, he entered the house of God and he ate the consecrated bread, which is lawful only for priests to eat. And he also gave some to his companions." So what Jesus does in response to this, he points to a story that is in the Bible, not something that they just kind of made up outside of it. It's there. And one of the Pharisees, great leaders of old, the guy who they revered, King David, and refers to that story, and Jesus basically says, hey, you don't seem to think it was such a big deal when David not only ate grain, he ate a whole loaf of baked bread that was baked specifically for God. But when my disciples are chewing on some grain, that's where you draw the line. So how obviously hypocritical. And then Jesus cuts right to it in the next 2 verses. Then he said to them, 27 and 28 now, "The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man, that's a title for himself. So I'm Lord, even of the Sabbath. And it's actually this idea about the Sabbath that Jesus tells about, that God made it for us, meaning for our benefit, for what we really need to provide something that's good for us, actually good for us. It's this idea that we're going to dive more into this weekend. So I mentioned at the top of the message that we're going to be taught on this by a guy who's written books about this, and he's coached not only our staff, but churches really across the country and even the world in the last several years. So this guy's name is Lance Witt. Pastor John sat down a little while ago to interview Lance on how he approaches and coaches people to approach Sabbath. So you're going to get a chance this weekend to hear what the two of these guys talked about. But before you do, I just want to tell you a few things about Lance. For several years, Lance worked at Saddleback Church in California as Rick Warren's executive pastor. Now, I'm going to guess that for more than a few of you, neither Saddleback nor Rick Warren really mean anything to you. Maybe you're not familiar with it, but you might know a book that Rick Warren wrote called The Purpose-Driven Life. Okay, and then he followed it up with another book called The Purpose-Driven Church. And Lance Witt was the one who created and coordinated the rollout of purpose-driven churches to churches across the country and even the world, okay? But as you're about to hear from Lance himself, as exciting as that time was, it's pretty costly for him as well. And actually it was out of that season that Lance was forced to learn some lessons that the rest of us now are really going to get a chance to benefit from when it comes to Sabbath. So Prairie Lakes, for our part, we've had a chance to spend actually a lot of time with Lance over the last 2 or 3 years, actually through a partnership with a group of ministry consultants called the Unstuck Group. And now Lance serves as a part-time ministry consultant with the Unstuck Group. I've had a chance for the last 4 or 5 years now to do that as well. And so Lance has come in and spent a lot of time with our staff, coaching us on team health and performance and Sabbath and all those things. Okay. Lance has also written several other books, including High Impact Teams. He wrote Replenish, which he's going to talk about here, and he's got another one coming out called Your One Life, Own It, Love It, and Live It. Okay, so without further ado, let's listen to Lance and Pastor John as they talk to us about this idea of Sabbath.
Lance, let's dig back a little bit on that pain point in your life. You were running hard in ministry and life, and it caught up to you. What was that like?
Yeah, I guess if you go all the way back, John, I think I've always been a person who's been driven, had a lot of ambition. My family would tell you I'm a hurrier. I don't know how to relax, sit still.
Okay.
And in a lot of ways, those qualities really served me well in many respects in my life.
You get rewarded for it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Go get her. He's a hard charger.
Yep.
Get her done.
But there's a shadow side when your hard work becomes workaholism, when your ambition becomes drivenness, then it begins to have some toxic results. And so I just met a buzzsaw called, Saddleback Church and the season that we were in. And just the pace of my life was out of control, and it was causing problems at home. I remember a lot of times my wife and I would have this same conversation over and over, where she would finally sort of have enough with the way I was living and say things like, you're never here. And even when you're here, you're not really here.
Yeah. Like
you're checked out, your head's buried in the computer all the time. Kids don't get the time they need with you. I don't get the time I need with you. And and I would always sort of play my victim card. And my victim card was, hey, babe, it's just for a season.
Oh, yeah.
Because when we get through with Easter or this building project or the next thing, it's going to get better. And I remember a couple of times in real hurt and frustration, she said to me, just stop it. Like there's always a reason or a season why you can't be who you're supposed to be.
Wow.
And so I finally just hit the wall, and some of it was stuff that was going on around me. But honestly, John, a lot of it was stuff inside of me and realizing like, man, the way I was living was not working.
Yeah.
And so I just began to feel like I had to do something different to have a different kind of life. And so after 7 years of being there in really what I thought was kind of my dream job and maybe where I would finish my ministry career, I stepped away without any job, without any church to go to, just stepped away because I knew I had to do something different.
So you were in such a spot that literally as a man well into his career thinking this could be my last stop and I'm going to finish it here, you walked away, no job, didn't know what you were going to do. You were in that kind of a spot. Well, Lance, tell us about, you kind of had two things happening in your world. You had the buzzsaw of ministry going on and the buzzsaw of business of life, which doesn't matter what profession you're in or anything. Whether you stay at home with your kids or whether you work outside the home, whatever it is, there's never a lack of busyness to be involved in. But it sounds like you kind of always had a busyness of your soul too, a hurriedness to things. Is that true?
Yeah, and I think it's been one of the biggest lessons I've been learning is that this whole issue about rhythm isn't just about your calendar and external things. It's also about what's going on inside of you. So sometimes now I can look back on it with clarity, and I would describe myself like when I started to slow down and try to practice things like Sabbath, I was like a parked car with its engine running and the gas pedal all the way to the floor and my RPMs redlining. So even when I started to change my habits, it took a while for my internal world to slow down where I could actually learn to like be still, to relax, to enjoy something that wasn't work. And it took a while to do that. But I realized it wasn't just a matter of rearranging my calendar. There was some hard internal stuff that I had to do that were part of the journey as well.
Did you learn some kind of deep things about how you were wired or stuff from your past that really contributed to that RPM going so high on the inside and being, I have so hard to slow down. I think we all can relate to that. And I think for those of us who tried the emotional health journey or kind of on that journey, who've tried to breathe and give God room, and we really coach that around Prairie Lakes, but it takes a long time. And what we usually discover is there's a stirring deep in me that's there for various reasons.
Yeah, and I think what you're hearing me articulate now is 15 years of sort of working on this. Yeah. So it comes really slow, but now I would be able to look back and go, a big piece of my journey was this narrative or internal script that I carried. And I really got it from my dad, who's an amazing man, but like a lot of men in his generation, responsibility was kind of a really high value. So the script I picked up early on in my life was work hard, be responsible, achieve, and that's how you succeed. And by the way, that's how you get loved. Well, when that's the narrative you're constantly telling yourself, of course you're going to be externally driven. Of course you're only as good as your latest success. And then you suffer, which a lot of, I think, leaders suffer with, which is this approval addiction. Wanting everyone to think well of you. And so you just stay compulsively busy and you're always in a hurry and you're always trying to, get to the next achievement and the next success. And over time, that just created some pretty toxic results in my life.
Absolutely. How long did it take you to discover that script that was programmed into your soul? And how long did that take? Because we all have them, right? We all have things like that. Whether it's I'm not good enough or I've got to earn, whatever it is. As you began to dig through, began to slow down, we're going to talk about how we do that. How long did it take you to figure that it was way deeper than the calendar?
Yeah, I think it's probably a good 3 years.
Wow.
I couldn't go that back because it's so incremental. And as you're beginning to do some of the internal reflective work about what really does drive you and what's going on inside of you and why I remember one day just sort of having this question that was like, Lance, why are you so compulsively busy? Why are you so driven? Like, what's that about? And so it took time to sort of peel back the layers of that onion to where I could kind of go, okay, that's the narrative I've been telling myself my whole life. And what I think is true for most of us is most of those false narratives, they're rooted in a lie, right? Yeah. And part of my lie was that, hey, busy people are important people. And my value is determined by what I can accomplish and my successes in life. And so I've had to replace that narrative now with truth about that I'm accepted by God.
Wow.
And that he loves me just as a child. I don't have to try to prove my worth to him.
Wow, and there's freedom in that, isn't there?
Oh, incredible freedom.
So Lance, how would you define Sabbath? How would you have 5 kind of parts to it that
Yeah.
I think are
Yeah.
awesome. I know you stole some of them, but
Yeah,
you specialized
absolutely.
it, which I
Absolutely.
love your first P.
Yeah. Well, so let me back up first.
Okay.
The word Sabbath itself is not this deeply like hard to understand. It just means to stop.
Wow.
And so I always think of Sabbath as like, what are the things that are the ought tos of my life, the things that feel like obligation and work? And God says, every 7 days, I give you permission to just stop.
Yeah.
And so when I think about that day, you go, okay, Lance, what does that look like? There are 5 words, and you're right, I've hijacked 2 or 3 of these. But the first word I use is the word prepare.
Oh, absolutely. Then listen, you're brilliant when you did this. I love this. Tell us what prepare is.
Okay, well, there's some work involved in getting ready not to work. There's some planning involved. There's some like preparation for what are we going to do about meals? And what about that, commitment or thing that we've got that we're going to unplug? Like there's some preparation to getting ready to not work. So there's some logistical preparation, but I also think there's some heart preparation. Like I want to enter Sabbath in a place that is relaxed and restful. And again, give yourself some time. It's going to take a while for you to really get to that place. But
so would you even say, Lance, that you need to prepare by undoing those scripts in you? Like, I didn't earn God's love. I don't have to earn his love. Those scripts that we need to kind of undo, part of the preparation.
I think that's part of the ongoing internal work that puts me in a place where I can really enjoy and experience Sabbath as God designed it. If not, that internal script will keep pushing me even while I'm trying to slow down.
Yeah, because to stop, we can take it all these different ways. Like you said, it's not a spa day. It's not that. But to stop producing.
Yeah.
And putting my value in what I produce.
Yep.
And what I earn. That seems to be big. Get real practical for us on the prepare.
Yeah.
What would that look like? I know, like for some of our families, they'll use paper plates.
Yeah.
That whole day because they don't want to. That's just one less thing they have to do, and they don't enjoy doing dishes, so they're not going to do it.
Right. Yeah, I'd say number one thing for me, the best preparation is get it on the calendar.
Okay.
And then I think you do have to kind of build a firewall around it.
Okay.
And like clear it and protect it and fight for it, that this is worth fighting for. I do think I have a friend of mine that they love getting with other families, but getting with the families felt like a big production. Like they had to, fix a big meal. The house had to be spotless.
Got to impress them.
Yeah. And so then what they decided was, you know what, we're going to keep it simple. We're going to order in food. We're not going to worry about the house. And so for them, preparation meant planning how they were going to actually engage relationally without it feeling like a big bunch of work or a big production to pull off.
So enjoy people.
Yeah, so actually enjoy people. Imagine that.
Wow,
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Weird.
So after prepare is then I just use the word stop.
Okay.
And I think, I'm always asking people the question, what would it look like for you to stop for 24 hours? What would it look like for you to stop feeling the need to be productive, to just slow down? I think part of this also has to do with what you do with your technology. Right? Like you might mean that you need to, shut off your email for a day or put down your phone.
So people just literally drop to the floor in agony.
I know. They're reaching for their phone right now because they're panicked that someone's going to take it away from them, right? So, but I think just to ask yourself and have a conversation as a family, what would it look like for us to stop for 24 hours? And then the third word I use is the word rest. And I think this is physical rest. Often we're sleep deprived. If you go back like 150 years, did you know the average person slept 11 hours a day? And a lot of the people I'm sure in your church, it's 4 or 5 hours. Yeah. And so no wonder we're stressed. We're just physically exhausted. And so I do think there's a physical sleep part of Sabbath that you take a good Sabbath nap. Yeah. Man, nothing is more refreshing than that, right?
Jesus took naps, man.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's also, I think, being at rest, allowing your soul to be at rest, just sort of relax and just breathe a little differently on a Sabbath. And then the fourth word, I love this, is the word delight. I think most Christians are delight deficient. And so when I go back to my Saddleback days, I didn't do anything but work. And when someone would invite me to do something recreationally, I would think to myself, do you know how much work I could get done? How many emails I could return? What kind of progress I could get on a project in the amount of time it would take for us to go play golf? And I think we have to come back to that God gave us 5 senses, not just for functional reasons, but for delight reasons. Yeah. So I remember one day hearing Mark Miller, who was a VP at Chick-fil-A, and he was speaking to a group of leaders, maybe 250 people in the room. And he said, you know, when you were born, God gave you a palette of colors with which to paint an amazing life. He said, you know what my problem with most of you guys is? You only paint with one color, the ministry color, your career color. And he said, there is so much that God made for you to experience. And it's taken me a while, honestly. But now I just feel like that part of me has come to life. And I think I'm a better person, a better husband, a better Christ follower when I have richness and beauty and recreation, good, healthy recreation in my life.
So Lance, are you telling us that we can delight in God and His creation and not feel guilty?
That seems like a fairly good idea and seems like it might actually be biblical, you know?
Okay. Throw the Bible card out on us. Us Iowans, we actually have to enjoy. I don't enjoy anything with delight. Come on, man. All right, so we have prepare, which I just love, and stop is pretty standard. Except how do we do it? It's going to be a big deal. Okay.
Yep.
Rest.
Yep.
Delight.
Yep. And the last one would be worship.
Okay.
So the Bible says it is a Sabbath unto the Lord.
Okay.
And so I think part of what the reason that God gave us Sabbath is so that we would actually have moments to connect with Him, to slow down, to be relationally connected to Him. And it was years before this ever dawned on me, and I'm kind of ashamed to admit it, but I always thought Sabbath was only about sort of God making sure that I had a rested soul and that I could have another great week coming up. But I think that one of the reasons God gave us Sabbath is to make sure that we had quality time with Him. Yeah. Like, I travel a lot, so my wife and I text and we'll do phone calls with one another. But you know, there is no substitute for that sort of face-to-face, unhurried time together. And I think part of the reason God carved out Sabbath is to make sure that we would slow down, take a little longer to read your Bible, take a walk where you're just grateful and you count God's blessings, where you have a meal and don't just scarf it down, but you actually just thank God for the delight of taste and food, and where you listen to worship music maybe, and you just allow your soul to connect with Jesus. And so worship to me is a really big part of a Sabbath experience.
And it's not pray all day with your hands folded and your eyes closed or sing hymns. It's just letting God speak, giving Him room and kind of an unhurried, unfettered relationship.
I don't think Sabbath means that you're just passive or you just sit all day. I think you've got to figure out, like, how are you wired and what puts life in you and what brings you to life and what do you delight in and how do you connect with God? And for some of us, that's in different ways, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think part of this is leaning into who you are and how you're wired by God. But there's this rhythm then of 1 in 7 where we experience all those things in our own unique way.
Yeah, uniquely. There's not a formula here as much.
It's not a one size fits all.
Right.
And your season of life is going to shape how this looks for some of you.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that being said, what would your words be to the busy, young Iowa family who hears this and is going to be hearing about Sabbath? And they can see it a little bit, but they just say there's no way. I don't know how we would ever make this happen. What would you say to them?
I'd say 1, study Sabbath for yourself. Dig into the Bible, find all those places where Sabbath is talked about. Pick up a couple of good books that would help you understand it. So I think like go to school on it. And then I would say secondly, like just get started.
Okay.
Right? Start where you are. Maybe right now all you can envision is a half a day. And you just figure that out. And again, you figure it out in a way that works for you and your family in the season, but get started. And then little by little, you'll begin to add. And I think what will begin to happen is it will become attractive to you, and then you're going to start desiring more of it, right? So I would say go to school on it, get started. Thirdly, I would say, once you get started, start figuring out and paying attention to what really works for you and your family. Right? Because your season may have some different nuances to it and some different expectations to it. And so you'll figure it out. And, but I think to get started, here's the other thing I would say, figure out the benefit that this is going to be for your kids as they learn how to be still, how to be quiet, how to have a rhythm that is healthy and life-giving and isn't this frantic, frenetic pace of life all the time.
Yeah.
And so just start right where you are, but get started.
Yeah, get started. That's so big. We teach the same principle in almost all of the all of the disciplines, right? When we say giving, we say start at 1% and work your way up to where God wants you to be. And we say serving, hey, dip your toes in the water and start and try something. So a family's not going to get this, and we're not going to get this perfect the first time, right?
No.
But it's okay to practice and R&D it and figure it out. But Lance, you've said this, and I want you to reemphasize this. There's no perfect formula. You got to do what works for you that accomplishes what Jesus said it's going to accomplish.
Yeah.
Which is replenish your souls.
Yeah. And it does take some time, and it's like, why would this be so hard to kind of take a day that's a break? Well, that says something about the brokenness and dysfunction in us, right?
Well, it really does.
But it does take some time. And I guess the thing I would say to people is it is absolutely worth fighting for.
Yeah.
Like if I could look back over the last 15 years and you say, like, what practice has made the most difference in terms of the health of your own soul, your relationship with your kids, your grandkids, I would say it has been the practice of Sabbath. It has been a huge game changer. So it is worth fighting for.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you were like me, you were probably like taking feverish notes there. But what I want to do, I just want to throw up a slide that captures probably those 5 things that were pretty key to a Sabbath that Pastor John and Lance talked about. And so I'm not going to read down all these things again, but I wanted to put it here as a reference tool for you if you missed anything. All right, so go ahead and copy some of those notes. Some of those are just my notes, and I'm just kind of trying to pick up phrases and provide some of my own stuff there. So if you've got all that already, great, but it's there for you as we close. Okay, so hey, we're not done with this topic of Sabbath. We've got 2 more weeks to go on it. Here's the thing. About this same time last year, we were in a different spot, really started to come out of COVID. And that COVID season at this time last year, we didn't have a vaccine yet. There was still a great amount of uncertainty, but the fall started to open things back up again. But here's what I consistently heard at this same point last year. Here's what I consistently heard from all of us. You know what? As hard as COVID was, there was just some things that we appreciated about that season of slowing down, of creating more margin, of getting off the hamster wheel of busyness and frenzied and stress, and I don't have enough hours in the day. And at that time, we were like, listen, we really, really want to not forget the good lessons that season taught us. Okay, so here we are. Here we are. It's fall quickly approaching. And the question for us is, will we walk out what we talked about last year? Will we start on this journey, okay? Small steps if that's what we need. But will we be serious about giving ourselves this gift that God's given us. So that in this upcoming fall season and beyond, we're people who are at rest in the ways that we need to be at rest. So just a small challenge for you, okay? As we continue, we've got a couple more weeks of this, so I'm excited for that. We've got some other creative things kind of coming up, over the course of the series. So before I let all of us go to the next part of our service, let me just do this. Let me just pray for us, and then we're going to continue, okay? Father in heaven, thank you for this gift of Sabbath. Thanks for Lance Witt and just everything he's meant to our church and so many churches around the country. God, help us to be really optimistic and really gentle with ourselves as we start this journey. God, help us to start it. So, Jesus, we pray all this in your name. Amen.